The following transmission contains unencrypted instances of explicit language. Mature audiences are cleared to proceed.
Shall we begin? Let's begin.
Ben Affleck, undoubtedly first thought of as an actor by most people, but the top of his IMDb profile highlights his directorial and screenwriting credits. Assuming that Mr. Affleck has a PR agent that's worth a damn, which is a pretty safe assumption, it's a sign that these are the achievements of which he's most personally proud. I'm Todd.
And I'm Dave, and we like to talk about spy movies.
In 1980, the CIA used a fake Hollywood movie to extract 6 diplomats from an Iran that was reeling through political upheaval and a rash of violent anti-American sentiment. In 2012, Ben Affleck made a real Hollywood movie to extract a Best Picture win from the Academy Awards. We're talking Argo in this episode of Spies Like Us. We have here a 2012 film dealing with real events from 1979. It's an Oscar winner for Best Picture, and it pulls Best Adapted Screenplay and Best Film Editing. I would nod at all of those for sure. This is our second Best Picture film that we've covered on this podcast, the other having been The Departed.
Yeah.
It might be our last, possibly, depending on how long the podcast goes. Because I took a look at other spy movies that have won Best Picture, and I came up with a very, very short list. And they're not exactly spy movies, but maybe The French Connection. I know it's a cop movie, but it does deal with an international drug smuggling ring.
Okay.
Casablanca, I think, is solid. And also, I would just like to do Casablanca, so fuck it. It's my podcast.
Right.
It's one of my favorite movies. And the main plot is the romance, but the story of what's going on has to do with, the resistance, les resistance. And I think most likely that we might see would be The Sting. Which is definitely just a spy adjacent movie, not a spy movie, but it is, one of those, like we talk about, like they're being cousins of the spy film, right?
Definitely a cousin.
What do you think of
Plus, Redford, we did Sneakers, and we're definitely going to have to do Spy Game at some point. So Robert Redford, we definitely got to nod to him a little bit. So I wouldn't mind doing The Sting.
Fantastic. We also got to make a note to see if we can find that spy movie that has Patrick Stewart in it so that we can finish our trifecta of films starring people that have played Professor X.
Right. We did James McAvoy in Atomic Blonde.
McAvoy was him in the First Class series of movies. And the guy that played Alan Dulles in The Good Shepherd was the voice of the animated Professor X.
Oh, so we definitely got to find Patrick Stewart's spy movie.
If we can, that'd be nice to just put a ring on that one.
Right.
This one, let's talk about this just a little bit. This Best Picture guy, there's a little controversy there in that it didn't get Ben Affleck a Best Director nomination.
Well, that's weird. Usually Best Picture, you got Best Director. I mean, it doesn't always happen, but... Oh, he wasn't even nominated.
That's right.
Oh, wow.
Not even nominated. You're right that they and I think they go together more like tightly more recently than they have like over the course of the Academy. Over the whole 92 Best Pictures, 66 have gotten Best Director, but only 5, including this one, have gotten Best Picture without even getting a nomination for the director. And a lot of people thought Affleck was robbed. I'll name Tarantino amongst them just because I take his word for it.
Oh, way over the Academy. Absolutely. I'll always take Patrick Stewart. Always take Tarantino over the Academy for sure. He should just have his own award show.
Some people, some of the Hollywood gossip rags, just trying to figure out like why did he get passed over? The best or most common consensus like I could find is that I think it was for him casting himself in the movie, which is kind of a weird reason to pass him over for best director. I mean, there were some people that weren't happy that he was, a non-Hispanic person playing a Hispanic person. You're always going to have that contingent.
Yeah, I saw that in quite a few articles. He got a lot of flack for that. And that's, I mean, especially back then, but now it's even worse to not. But, Mendez himself said he didn't care and he doesn't identify as Hispanic or something. But he's also CIA, so I don't think he really gives a shit anyway.
That's right. Mendez is actually, he's half Hispanic. And like you said, doesn't even identify himself as Hispanic.
Right.
But I think it was not just that, but also that Affleck is considerably taller than Mendez and doesn't look anything like him.
No, nothing.
And the reason I think that might have stuck with people is if you look at all the other actors in the movie, everyone really, really looks like the people that they're playing.
Yeah.
It seems like there was a lot of, and the film is even very proud of that. In the end credits, they show the side by side shots so that they can just kind of rub it in your face and say, look at how accurate we were. But then,
right.
Ben Affleck, meh.
Yeah, I don't get super excited. I mean, I don't think he's a terrible actor, but I don't get super excited when I see him. Not like Arkin or Goodman or Richard Kind showing up. You're like, hey!
Yeah, I've never been excited to see Ben Affleck in a film. I like his directing and his writing is just fine, and I wish him well and everything. But I give him the benefit of the doubt here, though. Myself, just my gut feeling is I don't think he cast himself. Now, you had been talking about his excitement about doing a CIA project, that he was just kind of fanboying all over it.
Well, I mean, he's been in tons of spy type of movies, and I saw him talking about working with Mendez, and he said he was one of the best CIA agents he had ever kind of worked with or something. So I think he might have just been really excited about this and was like, I'm going to be in it,
Yeah, I think he thoroughly enjoyed like doing the research, and his passion for the subject matter is absolutely evident in the movie making. As far as him putting himself in there, I'm just going to go with, I think it wasn't an ego thing so much as like more of a producerial decision to just make sure that the movie had like the, as much star power to increase its appeal and reach as possible. I think that's why he put himself in there.
Yeah, just to kind of raise the level and gain more audience with his name. I don't think that's really an ego thing. I think he was legitimately thinking, making a good business decision with that.
Yeah. But, even with the thing, I would say I really do think it's weird he didn't even get nominated. Arkin and Cranston both were on record saying that he was absolutely amazing to work with. Arkin even going so far as to say that it was like working with someone that was doing his 20th film instead of what it really was, which is his third. Mm-hmm. And that he was like extremely knowledgeable about every aspect of movie making. And was just like laser focused on the project. I need to revisit his other two films because both of those left me a bit cold, including The Town. But maybe I'll give, after watching and really processing this one, I think I need to take another look at those. Give them another shot. The movie was very well received, not just at the Academy, but also with audiences. The Canadians got their panties in a twist early on when it showed up at the Toronto Film Festival before it went to broad audiences. They were really unhappy about the portrayal of Canadian involvement in the thing, which the movie does seem to minimize. I mean, it's there,
Mhm.
Affleck tried to mollify them. He changed the end postscript of the film. The part he added in that whole little bit where it really says like, this is a story about like the great things that can be accomplished when nations work together or something like that. So, he tried.
Oh, okay. That was just kind of like a nod to them. I mean, it's not like they didn't do anything. Like, I mean, they got them the passports and facilitated going through the embassies and having safe houses and got them the flights, verified their identities. So
Yeah.
it's not like, you know.
Ex-president Jimmy Carter even got involved there and issued like a statement that the op was actually like 90% Canadian and the CIA only had a very small role in it, which is more in line with the Canadian story. But in the same statement, he also super praised Mendez and said he was like one of the 5 most important and amazing CIA agents of all time, which to me is a mixed message. Like, was it, does all the accolades belong to Mendez or does it belong to the Canadians?
Maybe that was kind of his like silent nod to the CIA.
Right.
Really being diplomatic, I guess.
Well, and also in the movie, they at the end of the movie, they're kind of saying something like the Canadians are gonna get all the credit for this. So I think that would really piss the Canadians off.
Yeah.
Implying that the public story of record is not what actually happened. And
yeah.
But it's also just kind of baked in the cake of a politician's job. Whenever your country is portrayed in entertainment media that reflects historical events, anytime your country is not painted in the most favorable light, you just got to get out in front of those cameras and bitch about it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you who wasn't unhappy. I mean, who wasn't unhappy about the portrayal of the CIA in the film was the CIA. This film was considered like a massive PR coup for them.
Yeah, they actually kind of applauded it because it put them in a really nice light. But this story in particular isn't the only time the CIA's ever been involved in Hollywood. I don't think it's a big secret now, especially with the Freedom of Information Act and a lot of declassifications. But this kind of goes all the way back to the Cold War. I think you gave me an article from Vice that had talked about CIA involvement in filmmaking. But I also found like a video and a few other articles, and we live in a free society, and anybody could submit stories and anybody can make a film. And going back to the Cold War, everybody knows about the Red Scare witch hunts, but it wasn't like there weren't foreign intelligence agencies like dropping propaganda. And because, especially with Russia during the Cold War, they were involved in a lot of propaganda that was swaying public opinion. The FBI and the CIA actually were heavily involved in a lot of media publications to try and counter the messaging.
So when you're talking here, are you talking about the story of the film or the story of the making of the actual film Argo, the 2012 film?
Well, it's actually both. I mean, they've been consultants, and especially like this, Mendez himself was involved in a lot of the production for this film. But I mean, the CIA's actually produced films, and I think they sold the script. I watched like this kind of mini documentary about what came out in the Freedom of Information Act, and I think they sold the script for Zero Dark 30 to Disney. And to kind of put them in a better light. Not only were they consultants, but they've like I found like a list of stuff they were like heavily involved in or consulting on. Like there's Argo, Zero Dark 30, like I mentioned, Homeland. The Recruit, I think, was actually something they were very happy to make because it kind of made anybody really want to join. It was kind of exciting, and it's about someone joining and going through training. And I think the CIA on their YouTube channel actually has like either a video on the YouTube channel or there was like several interviews about like how realistic the the farm's progress of training was, other than being electrocuted, I think is what they said. But it's more specifically, I think we talked about this post 9/11. It seemed like there was a lot of films coming out that either painted the CIA in a bad light, or maybe I felt like doing some damage control, but there was also a lot making them look good. Like, hey, there's this really dark like community, or there's a lot of dark things in this world, and we have to be involved. Like, yeah, there are things that we've done in the past, and we've done a lot of things to remedy them, but there's a lot of big threats out there that need to be addressed.
Yeah, well, I'm looking at the list that you put together of movies that the CIA has been heavily involved in helping to bring, to life. I feel like I know what you're talking about. Absolutely, about the needle swinging toward the, the CIA, those dirty motherfuckers, and kind of the way it kind of swings back this list when I see like Zero Dark 30, Homeland, Alias, 24, The Sum of All Fears. These all seem to be like that. It feels like at a certain point, like maybe the CIA somehow, and I'm just totally guessing here, but just looking at the timeline, it feels like at some point maybe they said like, maybe we shouldn't just be completely passive about like how we're being portrayed in Hollywood.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Maybe we should like, field a desk of someone like as a liaison and try to get out ahead and make sure we're not being vilified.
Well, one of the Vice articles I found had flat out said that the Office of Public Affairs, they got a lot of support from them in this list that I kind of put in together. So I think you might be onto something, that they were really trying to help improve their image. Because fast forwarding to after 9/11, when there was all the controversy of the waterboarding and the enhanced interrogation, I think they really needed to get active in improving their public image.
I think you had even suggested that they might have had their, we don't see this in the documentation, but had their fingers in the Company miniseries. Because there, I'm thinking of, like I'm looking at these movies. These are all works of fiction, with the slight exception of Zero Dark 30.
Right.
But that's an interesting case, which I'll talk about again in a second. But it would be really kind of difficult to go back and retcon like some of the early Cold War stuff and try to make the CIA look good.
Right.
But the company does seem to try to do that.
Yeah, and I think we talked about that in both our episodes of the Company. I don't know. I just get a sneaky feeling just because of it was so raw and real as to portraying what being an operative is like, and being in the field. And it's like, yeah, there's this really dark part of the world, and it needs to. Somebody's got to be a part of, as far as like national security is concerned, it's really important. So yeah, we did some shady stuff that's come out, but that's not the whole story.
And the Zero Dark 30, that's an interesting one because the original script was a work of fiction. It was about a failed attempt to kill bin Laden. And the film had already started shoot. Well, it was already into production. I think they had already started shooting it a little bit when Osama bin Laden was actually killed. And then they just
really?
Yeah, they suddenly needed a new script.
Oh wow.
So I wonder which one of those the CIA was most involved in. The original fictional script or the one that purports to be somewhat accurate, at least based on real events. Right. And I think we're ready to head into the briefing room and start tearing apart the tradecraft here.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Retinal scan complete. Validating security clearance. Clearance granted. You may now enter the briefing room.
I think the opening of this movie is pretty much fucking genius. What they do is they give you a very, very, I think, condensed, accurate history lesson of everything you need to know about why this shit is happening. And they tell this story using storyboards, which is also like a visual cue to the fact that this is going to have something to do with Hollywood and movie making. Really fun.
Yeah, it's a very powerful opening, and historically, it really kind of set the tone. Uh, just kind of like I don't know, background of what's going on historically. This event, the hostage crisis, was kind of a long time coming, and I mean, I don't know how many times this is gonna come back to the Dulles brothers, but it's definitely gonna come back a lot for me.
Everything comes back to the Dulles brothers.
So let's just start with British Petroleum had an agreement with Iran for pumping oil out, but they kind of screwed over the country. So the democratically elected, I guess leader of Iran, Mossadegh, was pissed off, and he basically nationalized oil, and that pissed off British Petroleum, which knowing the Dulles brothers' connections to international wealth, I guess is how we'll describe it.
Yeah,
is going to get them involved. So there was a planned coup to overthrow Mossadegh and reinstate the Shah. There's actually a really famous speech by him that's super powerful. And just so you know, the people of Iran did not like the Shah. And, in stories, especially old stories of monarchy, you get like these really kind of twisted, selfish, pompous type of leaders. Well, the Shah was that type of guy. And he actually was really Machiavellian in the way that he kind of ruled, and he treated the people like shit. And he was only kind of doing whatever the U.S. told him to do. He was kind of supposed to be a puppet for us, kind of like what we wanted out of Saddam Hussein. And that pissed off a lot of the people of Iran. And more importantly, that kind of fueled the fire for a lot of the radicals. And in the process of reinstating the Shah, kind of wiped a lot of the, I guess, moderates. And so it gave the radical Islamic movement a lot of power. And that's what led to the revolution, the Islamic revolution led by Ayatollah Khomeini. And this is kind of where we're starting at in the film. So one, you have a country of people that are really pissed off at America. And, Middle Easterns in general don't forget things. And, Persians very much so do not forget things. And they were, and so you now have mobs of angry people.
I just wish more Americans were aware of what the fundamental complaint is.
Right. Yeah.
What pissed the Iranians off so much in the first place. And because all of the stuff is so it's not like someone campaigned in the US on hey, if elected, I will overthrow the leader of Iran.
Right.
it was all done in secret. So Americans didn't know we were doing any of this shit. And so the first signal that we as a people got was flag burning and overrunning the embassy in this huge angry mob.
Right. And that actually led to a lot of racism in the US during not only during this period, but in the 80s. Where Persians in the U.S. were heavily oppressed, or it was kind of dangerous to be around here during that time as an Iranian, as well as being an American in Iran. So, there was a lot of anger going on. And so I think this film did a great job of showing how dangerous it would be to be an American in Tehran.
Yeah, for sure. And the scene with the attack on the embassy was very well filmed. And fun note, some of the ways they got this great grainy historical feel was they passed out a shit ton of 8mm cameras to the extras in the crowd, and they just said just shoot whatever you want, just shoot stuff. And they blended.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and they blended all of that footage in with the high definition footage, which gave it a really, really great gritty historical feel.
Yeah, it really looked like real footage, and I've seen comparison images of actual footage and the footage in the film, and it looks pretty accurate.
It definitely sets the table with the feeling of threat, and really gives you a, the correct feeling of what these six people that escape capture are kind of up against, like what the mood of the country is. They're not just six people that the authorities would like to question. They're six people that the entire fucking country is incredibly enraged at.
Right.
But these six people actually did. There's six of them. They're all legitimate, real, based on real people, each of the individuals. In the movie, we see them taking refuge at a single Canadian diplomat's house. This movie does condense certain things, and then it expands on certain other things. This is a case of condensation where, the movie just shows the six people escaping as a group and going to one house. Boom, pat. That's great. And it should be that way for the sake of keeping the story moving along. But the reality is they didn't all escape necessarily all at the same time. They weren't all at the same house. The British and New Zealanders did, in fact, give them quite a bit more assistance than what's reflected in the movie, which was another way that the movie pissed off people overseas. Handful of notes. I'm happy they have a crawl space, like when someone knocks on the door and he says, "Okay, everyone into the crawl space." All right, that's cool. That's legit. But they were all seated at like a big table. They were having like I don't know, pretty much a fucking dinner party. And so if anybody actually did come into the house, they're going to count a lot more plates and glasses than there are people. So minus spy points on that.
This actually was my worst tradecraft number 3. Was just the dinner party, but also in general, they kind of seemed like they were just hanging out at the house. I mean, I'm not really expecting them to pull like kind of like a Holocaust situation where they're just living in the walls all the time. But I mean, they were visibly terrified for their lives, in a lot of the shots. But they're just kind of hanging out in the living room or in the dining room, like having like a diplomatic discussion. These are all diplomats, so they're having like academic discussion about what's going on.
The other situation is that, as presented in the movie, is that somebody at the embassy had put together a book with pictures of like everyone that was working there. Mm-hmm. And of course, Cranston is like, calls that guy a dumbass or whatever, really did that. But the idea is that the Iranians will be able to figure out that they're missing 6 people. It seems a little odd to me that even if the Iranians had found that book, which of course the book was shredded, but we'll get to that in a second. This is where I'm going with this. That even if they had the book, and they had like, how many hostages did you say they got? Like 50?
I listened to like a couple podcasts and read up on like the actual event. I think there were 50 hostages, and then there was the 6 that escaped.
Yeah, I don't feel like if I'm, the Iranian Republic Guard, that, I find 44 people in a book with 50 pictures. I think I'm more likely to just think that, records are not perfect.
Right.
That, these people might have been here last week and they're not here anymore. Like it weirded me out a little that they were so freaked out about the fact that the Iranians are going to put this together and figure out exactly like the faces of the 6 people that escaped.
Right.
Again, not sure if that was true or not, but we do know that the shredding, of course, when the embassy was attacked, we get everyone like busting out the hammers, killing all the hard drives, putting everything into the shredder, just choking the shredders with documents. But what the Iranians actually did do with all that shredded stuff is they had, according to the CIA, it was experienced and skilled carpet weavers reassembling all those tens of thousands of shreds of paper to recover the documents. And in the movie, we have them using little kids to do that, which also I thought was kind of weird. It kind of gave, I don't know, just that one element, which I think would be super clever. I mean, don't get me wrong. That's a great way to employ your kids. They've got nimble fingers, and you give them a task, let them go. But I felt like it kind of gave Iran kind of a more of a third world country-ish feel than I super felt comfortable with.
Right.
But yeah, in reality, according to the CIA, it was, highly skilled professional carpet weavers who actually also might be kids. Maybe kids are great carpet weavers.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Maybe.
Either way, I'm going with plus 5 points on that. I'm calling that my number 3 best, is whether it was kids or carpet weavers or kid carpet weavers, but reassembling that shredded stuff, that's some good tradecraft. That's some plus 5 points.
Yeah, very diligent.
Let's turn to our main character and our protagonists. We'll talk about Mendez, the CIA, and the State Department.
Yeah, he's a exfiltration specialist.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure a lot of this was fudged more, showing the bureaucracy. I mean, like, believe me, I mean, you know me well enough to know you don't have to prove it to me that there's going to be exorbitant amount of bureaucracy. But I had trouble believing that this guy, who's an exfiltration specialist that probably has quite a few ops under his belt, is going to be kind of pushed to the side as much as he was in the beginning. But I mean, you got to make an Oscar-worthy movie, right?
Yeah, I don't know really how much real bureaucratic pushback there was against this operation. In reality, it makes for great movie making. The idea here is, he's clearly got one boss whose title is never exactly made clear. It just seems to be his direct superior. That first thing just wants him to stand down and shut up. But then he does get called in and gets teamed up with Cranston. I'm not sure. Did you get the idea Cranston was also Mendez's superior or just a fellow agent?
I think that first guy might have been the director or deputy or somebody higher up, and Cranston was kind of like his direct superior, because throughout the film he's always talking to Cranston.
Okay.
So I think Cranston's like the up the chain, passing up and down orders or approvals and denials or something.
The idea with Office Guy telling Mendez to just stand down and shut up is that the State Department wants to handle this themselves. Mm-hmm. But he does send Mendez along as a consultant, but he's also just supposed to kind of just be there to just make sure that we can say that we sent someone. We're not actually expecting you to get involved. We just want to be able to cover our ass. But Mendez, he doesn't like what he hears, the ideas from the State Department.
I think they wanted to do teachers, and their plan was to use bicycles to get to the border.
They had a few ideas, yeah.
And it was in the middle of winter, and it just was a really bad idea. And Mendez voices his opinion on how bad of an idea it was, especially since the entire country hated Americans and kicked all the teachers out.
Yeah, that's a classic kind of movie scene that you just got to have, like the guy that can't keep his mouth shut when he hears total bullshit.
Right. Yeah.
One of their ideas is also to use press credentials as covers for the 6 people. Right. This being so that instead of bicycling through the mountains or something, they could just fly out. And Mendez says you can't do that because, if you do that by midnight, Peter Jennings will be hanging from a noose or something like that.
Right.
Which, a couple things to say about that. First of all, Jennings was, I didn't know this. You know how some of the people you see on TV, like the old guys given the anchors, to you, you just grow up, they're just like the old guys that tell the news. And then later in life, like you find out like how badass they were when they were younger, and like why it is that they are like the face of ABC News or something.
Right.
This is a good reference because Peter Jennings really did come to prominence because of his coverage of the Middle East. He was like massive on the Middle East way before anybody else was. Remember in Munich, which we covered, like he was right there. In 1972, like he even got his camera crew like really close to the athletic compound where the athletes were being held hostage. And you know that super famous picture of the guy like with the mask, you know, and the rifle?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that was Peter Jennings' crew that got that shot.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool.
Mm-hmm. Weirdly, though, I don't think Jennings was stationed in Iran in 1979. By this time, he had moved over to a London desk, and he was still covering the Middle East very heavily. However, I give plus spy points because we know that there are 3 covers that the CIA will never use. Do you know what they are?
No.
It's journalists, emergency aid workers, and clergy. And there's really great reasons for that, because it's what Mendez is implying, even though he doesn't explicitly state it. If you ever use a journalist as cover, and if they ever get caught, all journalists are now on the table, you know, to get rounded up. And so, you know, you just never want to put that possible seed of distrust on journalists, emergency aid workers, and clergy, because you want those people to be able to do their fucking jobs in safety.
Yeah. Right.
You know, they say, well, do you have a better idea? And I love the fact that he honestly says, nope.
Yeah.
In most movies, after shooting down all of the bad ideas of the harumphers, you know, they would say, do you have a better idea? And he would say, why, yes, in fact, I do. Right? But no, I love the fact that he's just like, nope.
Yeah.
Which underscores the difficulty of the mission. And I like that.
Yeah.
But he does come up with an idea. His kid's telling him all about Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, the old 80s one.
And then cute. Yeah, and plus spy points. I love this, and it was true that, you know, the CIA had worked with legendary makeup artist John Chambers, played here by John Goodman in the past. This is the guy that won the Oscar for the Planet of the Apes makeup. Because of Argo, John Chambers is the only Oscar winner to be portrayed in a movie that won the Oscar for Best Picture.
Oh, really? That's really funny.
But yeah, he hears the idea, and he's like, okay, but you can't build a plan around a movie that doesn't exist. You know, he says like, well, the Iranian Guard, like, yeah, they don't know shit about Hollywood, but they all have cousins selling DVDs on La Brea.
Right.
Which I thought was a good line. And also, like, I felt like that's legit. And we do see that. Like, the Iranian Guard, they're not dumb. They have people they know how to use telephones. They have
right.
You know, friends they could call, or they could watch the television, subscribe to a, you know, Hollywood Reporter magazine, and see that there is no film. And so
they have their own intelligence network, and there were a lot of Persians in America during the 80s. So, I mean, in the late, like during the 70s and 80s. So it's not like they wouldn't have somebody they could contact.
So they go through and they find, you know, they find like an actual script, and they super luck out on.
Well, before that,
yeah,
it was John. It was John Goodman's character that was like, we're gonna need somebody. What did he say? We need somebody with credits that can deal with classified information and make a fake movie for free. And that's when we get Alan Arkin's character, and they have a really cool meeting where Mendez has to sell the story to this big Hollywood producer. And the producer's like, you want to go into a place that hates Americans, that that are looking to execute CIA agents and use their blood in their breakfast cereal. And you're going to use 007 to get these 6 people out. So it was kind of cute. And I think what really sold him on the idea, he saw the news, they were watching TV and there was like news footage of what was going on with the hostage crisis. And he was like, we're going to need to get a script. And that's what segues into them going script hunting.
And when they find one, I mean, either they super lucked out or they were super smart, but I think the one they found is a real gem, And we'll be back next week to talk more about what they do with that script, as well as discussing the tradecraft of the overall CIA operation.
As always, the best way to make sure you don't miss out on that is to hit the subscribe button on iTunes, Google, or your favorite podcast app. Also, you can find updates on our Facebook page or website, spieslikeus.net. And please, if you can help us out and give us some feedback by rating us and leaving comments. We're always trying to improve the show, and your thoughts would be a big help.
The preceding transmission sampled the songs Ice Cold by Audionautics, Enter the Party by Kevin MacLeod, and sound effects from freesound.org. Attributions and links are found at spieslikeus.net. Editing by Todd Hostetler.